In March 1888, the northeastern United States operated under established assumptions about winter weather management and transportation resilience. Rail networks connected major urban centers from Boston through New York to Philadelphia, carrying passengers and freight on fixed schedules. Telegraph lines transmitted commercial and governmental communications across the region. Cities relied on horse-drawn vehicles for local transit and goods distribution. Late winter storms were anticipated events, generally managed through temporary service adjustments and snow clearing by municipal labor forces. The infrastructure of the period reflected no operational precedent for sustained, region-wide immobilization by snow accumulation and wind.
The northeastern United States experienced typical continental winter conditions in the late 19th century, characterized by periodic coastal storm systems and cold air masses from interior Canada. Average March snowfall in New York City measured 8 to 10 inches for the entire month. Rail operations formed the primary arterial transportation system, with the New York Central, Pennsylvania Railroad, and New Haven lines carrying thousands of passengers daily between urban centers. Telegraph networks provided the only rapid long-distance communication infrastructure, with lines strung on wooden poles along rail corridors and roadways. Urban centers depended on predictable transit schedules and uninterrupted commodity flow. Snow removal relied on manual labor and horse-drawn plows, adequate for typical accumulation rates and storm durations.
On March 10, 1888, a low-pressure system formed off the Carolina coast and began tracking northeastward along the Atlantic seaboard. Simultaneously, a cold, high-pressure system descended from eastern Canada, establishing frigid surface temperatures across New England and the mid-Atlantic region. The interaction between these air masses created conditions for heavy precipitation and sustained winds. By the morning of March 11, the low-pressure center intensified rapidly as it moved north of Cape Hatteras, drawing moisture from the Atlantic while encountering the cold continental air mass. Barometric pressure dropped measurably across coastal stations. The configuration produced a sharp thermal gradient conducive to significant snowfall rates across a wide geographic area extending from Maryland through southern New England. Snow began falling across the northeastern region during the late evening of March 11 and continued with minimal interruption for 36 hours. Accumulation rates reached 2 to 3 inches per hour at peak intensity in New York City and southern New England. Sustained winds of 40 to 50 miles per hour generated extensive drifting, with reported drift heights exceeding 20 feet in urban areas and 40 to 50 feet in rural locations. Total snowfall measurements recorded 21 inches in New York City, 42 inches in Albany, and 50 inches in parts of Connecticut and Massachusetts. Visibility decreased to near zero during wind-driven snow periods. Temperature remained below 20 degrees Fahrenheit throughout the event, preventing any melting or compaction. The combination of depth, wind velocity, and duration exceeded all documented winter weather events in the region's recorded history. Rail operations ceased across the northeastern corridor by midday March 12. Snow accumulation on tracks exceeded clearance capabilities of locomotive plows, while drifting buried rails completely in exposed sections. The New York Central Railroad reported over 200 trains stranded between stations, with passengers trapped in unheated cars. The New Haven line stopped all service between New York and Boston. Street-level transit in New York City halted completely as snow depth exceeded the height of horse-drawn streetcars and omnibuses. Horses proved unable to navigate drifts or maintain footing on snow-covered pavements. Elevated railway lines in New York experienced frozen switches and power failures. By March 13th, no scheduled rail or street transit operated within the affected region, isolating urban populations and severing intercity connections. Telegraph infrastructure failed extensively as wind and snow accumulation brought down wooden poles and severed wire connections. The Western Union Network reported widespread outages across New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Massachusetts beginning March 12th. New York City lost telegraph contact with Boston, Philadelphia, and Albany for periods exceeding 24 hours. Commercial transactions depending on telegraphic confirmation suspended operations. Government offices could not transmit official communications beyond local messenger range. Newspaper wire services ceased receiving reports from affected cities. The regional communication system, constructed for typical weather loads, proved unable to withstand simultaneous wind stress and ice accumulation across hundreds of miles of exposed infrastructure. Isolation was absolute for communities between major urban centers. Urban centers experienced complete operational shutdown by March 13th. New York City's normal commerce halted as workers could not reach employment locations and businesses remained closed due to impassable streets. Delivery of coal, food, and other commodities to residences and commercial establishments stopped. Fire departments could not respond to alarm calls, with equipment immobilized by snow depth. Hospitals reported inability to transport patients or receive medical supplies. Milk delivery ceased, affecting infant nutrition in tenement districts. Sanitation operations stopped, with refuse collection impossible. Water supply systems in some municipalities experienced freeze failures in exposed infrastructure. The duration of immobilization exceeded any planning assumptions for temporary disruption, creating supply shortages across essential services and commodities. The urban population, numbering over 1 million in New York City alone, remained confined indoors without normal provisioning systems. Snow accumulation and drifting immobilized the region for 4 consecutive days, from March 12th through March 15th. Clearing operations faced unprecedented volume and distribution challenges. New York City deployed available municipal workers, but manual shoveling proved inadequate against citywide snow volumes estimated at 24 million cubic yards. Private contractors supplemented public efforts, but horse-drawn equipment could not navigate the very drifts it was meant to remove. Some rail lines remained blocked for a week after snowfall ended. Rural areas experienced isolation periods exceeding 10 days as roads remained impassable. The physical removal of snow exceeded available labor and equipment capacity by a factor contemporary engineers estimated at 5 to 1. Normal activity resumption depended not on organized clearing, but on gradual melting and natural compaction over subsequent weeks. The storm affected an estimated 10 million people across the northeastern region. Casualty figures recorded approximately 400 deaths, primarily in New York City and surrounding areas. Causes included exposure during attempted travel, building collapses under snow load, and medical emergencies where transportation failure prevented care access. New York City reported 200 deaths directly attributed to storm conditions. Additional fatalities occurred in Massachusetts, Connecticut, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. Economic loss estimates reached $20 million in 1888 currency, reflecting halted commerce, damaged infrastructure, and livestock losses. Elevated railway structures in New York sustained structural damage from snow and ice loading. Thousands of telegraph poles required replacement. The concentration of casualties in dense urban populations highlighted the vulnerability created by dependence on continuous mobility and supply systems.